How to make decisions like King Solomon. You actually don't want to make decisions like King Solomon, at least not how he made decisions for himself. So before I get into this, I want you to know that I actually know how to make decisions. Okay, and that's not just me being arrogant, that's important context for you, because I got to a point in my life where I looked at where I was and I decided that I wasn't where I wanted to be. So I changed it, right? I made the decision, I committed to it, and I built towards it. So now I'm sitting in Bali in my brand new villa. I'm getting closer to my goals every day because I chose this, not because it fell into my lap. The reason I say that is because there are a lot of people online right now telling you how to make decisions, how to build your life, how to think, and a decent chunk of them have no idea what they're actually doing with their own life. They're teaching frameworks they've never applied themselves, and they're giving advice they don't even take. So whether it's me or anyone else, be careful who you listen to. Check if they've actually done the thing that they're talking about, because the advice might sound good, but it doesn't mean that it's come from anywhere real. Anyway, I think I was talking to you about King Solomon. Let me get into that. If you've ever caught yourself doing this, okay, giving someone else advice that you know you should be listening to yourself, please do drop a comment below. I want to hear, and I want to make sure I'm not the only one that does this. And if these kind of topics are interesting to you, general mindset and practical ways to actually hit your goals from someone who has done it themselves, make sure you're subscribed. So I've had this conversation with mates more times than I can count, right? Someone close to me in a relationship that clearly isn't working. They know it, I know it, everyone around them knows it, and I can see exactly what's happening. Right? They're delaying what's ultimately going to be a painful end to something that stopped serving them a long time ago. The advice is simple, okay? You get out, you move on, and you stop wasting both your times. And if you know me, I'm a pretty direct person. I say it clearly and I don't sugarcoat it, because from the outside looking in, it's really simple. Meanwhile, I was in the exact same position, different relationship, same pattern. People around me could see it. They were telling me, and deep down, I knew that they were right? I knew it, but I just couldn't bring myself to make the decision. I kept looking for reasons to stay, kept telling myself that it was more complicated than it looked, and I kept holding on to something that I already knew wasn't serving me. So why does this actually happen? And well, there's three reasons. Number one is your ego, because acting on the obvious answer often means admitting that you've been wrong, that you've been tolerating something that you shouldn't have, that you already knew the answer to and you didn't act on it. And your ego doesn't like that. So instead of acting, it generates a load of reasons why this situation is a bit more nuanced, right? Why the advice is obvious to everyone else, it doesn't quite apply here. Solomon had hundreds of political marriages, partly because dismantling them meant admitting that they were mistakes. This is ego at a royal scale. Number two is your fear. And the answer is usually clear, but it requires action. And action means change. When you're advising someone else, the risk, it isn't yours to carry. But when it's your own life, you've got to live with the consequences, unfortunately. That raises the stakes, and suddenly clarity gets a lot harder to access, or at least the action required to access the change gets more difficult. Number three is your identity. And this is probably one of the most underrated ones, because sometimes accepting the truth actually requires you to change your idea of who you are. The relationship that you're staying in isn't just a situation, it's a real part of your identity. You know, the career path that you're on isn't just a job, it's how you explain yourself to people. So changing it means rebuilding part of how you see yourself. And that is uncomfortable in a way that has nothing to do with logic. The problem is rarely a lack of clarity. The problem is that clarity demands courage. So most people aren't confused about their lives, they're just negotiating with how they're perceiving their reality. So how do you actually fix it? How do you access Solomon's clarity, but for your own life, not just everyone else's? One thing that actually works, I call it the third person test. Whatever situation you're stuck in right now, whether it's a relationship or a career or some big business decision, something you keep putting off, just ask yourself one question. If your best mate came to you with this exact situation, the same details, same circumstances, same excuses, what would you tell them to do? That's the answer, okay? The one that came to you immediately without overthinking. That's usually the truth that you're avoiding. And it works because it removes you from the equation. When it's your mate's problem, your ego isn't on the line. Your identity isn't threatened. Your fear isn't yours to carry. You think like Solomon advising someone else, which is exactly when Solomon was at his best. The relationship version. If your best friend was in a relationship right now, tolerating what you're tolerating, would you tell them to stay? Be honest with yourself. For a career, if a mate told you they'd been unhappy in their job for 2 years and they kept talking about leaving, but they hadn't moved, what would you say to them? Or even with business, if someone that you respected said they'd had an idea for 18 months, but they just haven't started yet because the timing wasn't right, what would your honest reaction be? That answer that you give in those moments, that is clarity without the ego. That's you actually thinking like Solomon, the version of Solomon that actually worked, okay? The goal isn't to remove emotion entirely. Some of it's useful. It tells you what matters. But when emotion is the reason that you can't act on something that you already know the answer to, that's when you need to decide it. Even for just 10 seconds, look at your situation like it belongs to someone else. Give yourself the same advice that you'd give them. So, how to make decisions like King Solomon. Obviously, it's not going to be the way that he made them for himself, because I think we all know now they didn't work out particularly well for him, but the way that he made them for everyone else, which is with distance, with clarity, and most importantly, without his ego in the way. So thankfully for us all, you don't need to be a king. You just need to borrow that distance for a moment. Step out of your own situation and look at it the same way that you look at a mate's, because the advice that you'd give other people, the stuff that usually comes out really clear and obvious when it's not your life on the line, that's exactly what you need to hear yourself. So take your own advice for once, genuinely, and revolutionary concept, I know, but you're not confused, you're just comfortable. And comfort is the story that you tell yourself so that you don't have to act on what you already know that you have to do. So if this landed with you, make sure to drop a comment and let me know the decision that you've been sitting on for too long, and I'll see you next week.